Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Creative Confidence Podcast, where we talk to subject matter experts about creativity, leadership, innovation, and growth. I'm Colita Stafford, a partner at IDEO. For those of you new, we open up the last portion of our podcast for questions. So think about what questions you might have for our very special guest today, Roger Martin. I'm going to give a proper intro in just a moment. First of all, thank you, everyone, for calling in, joining us. Please share where you're from. Many of you have. Roger, look at how many people we have today.
It's great. And I want to have a shout out to Carl from Grand Prairie, Alberta. There's a pulp mill outside Grand Prairie, Alberta, which is in northern Alberta. And I visited it in the winter, and it was still the coldest place I've ever been.
And so he'll have to confirm if it's still there and still.
Yes, that would be a good question. I suspect it is.
And thank you, everyone. We have folks all around the world today from Colombia, Brazil, Sweden. So thank you for making the time. I am so excited for our conversation today. Roger is a repeat guest of IDOU, and he's going to be talking to us today about strategy. And most importantly, what makes for a good strategy? And what are some mistakes that people make when it comes to planning strategy? We're also going to talk about tips. So let me give Roger a proper intro. You have an impressive resume. Roger is the strategy advisor to numerous C-suite exec teams in Fortune 500 companies, such as Procter & Gamble, Lego, Ford, and many more. He's the author of numerous best-selling books, including Playing to Win, which I can see on the shelf behind you there, by the way, Roger.
Yes.
And your latest release, A New Way to Think. His writing has been featured in numerous publications, including Harvard Business Review. And I personally am really enjoying all of your Medium articles of late.
Okay.
In 2017, Roger was named the world's #1 management thinker by Thinker 50. He is also the former dean of Rotman School of Management at the University of Toronto, and he is an instructor at IDOU of our course Designing Strategy. Roger, as always, thank you for joining us.
It's a pleasure. And the one book you didn't mention, I will mention is The Creating Great Choices, because I co-authored it with IDEO partner Jennifer Riel.
Thank you for calling that. It's a good book. That's a good one.
It was fun. It was fun to work with her.
So, and yeah, we get the pleasure of getting to work with her all the time now. So yes, she is at IDEO. She's a partner here. So Roger, before we dive in, a quick warm-up question. What's something that's bringing you joy these days?
Well, it's the Medium column that you mentioned.
Oh, really? Yeah.
Yeah. I love it. I sort of started innocently enough. The book publicist for that last book, A New Way to Think, just told me, "Hey, Roger, have you ever thought about writing on Medium?" And I thought, "Oh, I'll give it a try." I did, and I wrote a piece called "The Role of Management Systems in Strategy," because lots of people asked me that from having read Playing to Win. People seem to love it. So I thought I would do another one and another one. And sure enough, we're almost, with 152 later, every week I've done one of these columns. And I really enjoy it, because I go and work with companies, and whatever they're interested in or intrigued by, I often have seen it before and seen other people be intrigued by that or perplexed by it. And I write a piece. So that rhythm of listening to my clients and then being able to write something that's of hopefully general interest that is a joy. Maybe that's a nerdly joy, but it is a joy.
No, it's wonderful. And you're gonna be able to share more of that gift with all of us today, because we are going to talk about strategy. And so I'm going to start with the beginning. I want to set some context of some definitions, because some of our listeners today may be very new to this world. So as we near the end of the year, pardon me.
I hope that was a Freudian slip there.
I know, right? The end of the year, many companies start to talk about it's the time for strategic planning. Mm-hmm. Now, but during our prep call for this webcast, you mentioned you want to demolish the concept of strategic planning. Yeah. Tell us why.
It's because sort of planning in that two words, I wouldn't want to demolish it if strategy was the most important word in that twosome or even equal. But it turns out that the practice of the thing that's called, strategic planning out in the world is almost entirely planning and almost nothing strategy. I just think we've always had planning. Companies that long before strategy came sort of into existence in the 60s, business strategy. We had military strategy forever, but business strategy kind of came into existence in the 60s, into prominence in the 70s and 80s. Long before that, we had planning. And what I think has just generally happened is that people have kept on planning, and they call it strategic planning because it sounds kind of cool and interesting, but there is little strategy in strategic planning, and that's why I want to demolish it.
All right, you've got some fans who agree. So, but the big idea is to recognize that they're two different things, and
Yes.
so let's talk about that. So, what are the key differences? Why is it important to distinguish planning from strategy? What are the key differences? So let's start with, why is it important to distinguish these two?
Well, because they are so different is the case. And if you only have planning, I would argue you've got a problem. And so the really distinguishing feature of strategy is that strategy is about influencing the thing you don't control. So as a company, there are lots of things you control. You control completely how many people you hire. You control completely how many, I don't know, square feet of office space you lease. You control how many raw materials you buy, when you buy them, all those things, how much you advertise. All of those things are things you control. The one thing that you don't control that's super important is the customer. Right? You cannot order the customer to give you money. I mean, the government can, but if you're a corporation, you can't. What you need to do is compel them to want to give you money, and actually enough money so that you can cover your costs and earn a profit. So the art of strategy, and it is an art form, the art of strategy is figuring out how you can configure all those things you control in a way that compels customers to take the action you wish customers to take. And that's hard. It's tricky. It's intellectually challenging, but it is the essence of strategy.
I love it.
Planning, on the other hand, right, is just saying kind of what we're going to do in each of the areas we control, right?
Got it.
And what typically happens, unfortunately, is that companies spend a whole lot of time on strategic planning, and they ask everybody. They say, "Oh, Colita, you're running manufacturing. What do you want?" And Co says, "Oh, I need to refurbish this factory, and it's going to take 150 million." And I would say, "Okay, Rich, that's great. Daniel, you're marketing. What do you want?" "I need a big ad campaign." And they just list all of them and come up with a list of things to do and a list of initiatives. And in most strategic plans, you'll see long lists of initiatives, right?
Got it.
They'll do this. But if you add them up, they don't compel the customer to do what you wish. And then people get all sad, right? It's sort of like, "Oh, we did all these things on the list, and it didn't provide that." And they say, "Well, I guess this strategic planning doesn't work." It doesn't.
So what you're saying is exactly. So when many companies feel they are doing strategy, what they're really just doing is planning.
Yes.
Got it.
They're organizing everybody. And I think everybody on the call would recognize that they organize everybody. You have to fill out forms and make your submissions, and then you get together and horse trade among, are we going to do this? Are you going to do that? Or all of that. And the customers are sitting there sort of saying, "I don't care. That's not compelling to me," and buying from somebody else.
Yeah. So just to make this very tangible, for some who this may be a new construct. So like the qualities of planning involve things like projects, timelines, deliverables, budgets. They're very much the things, like you said, that you can, to a large degree, control.
Yes.
What are the qualities of strategy? That includes things like
making choices to do some things and not other things, and making those choices with a view of the customer,
Okay.
having an understanding, a deep understanding of the customer, something that last time I checked, IDEO is pretty serious about, is having a deep understanding of the customer so that you can figure out how to configure the things that you control to deliver something unique to them where they say, I have to have that one, or figure out how to deliver it at such a lower cost than all your competitors that you can win over your competitors. So there you don't have to be kind of unique and different to win in that way. And that's what I call and Mike Porter originally called a low-cost strategy versus something unique for them that nobody else can do in that way, and that's differentiated.
Got it. And we are going to talk a little bit more even about this because we want to get past planning and really help equip our listeners today with strategy. But just one last thing on this. So why do people fall into the planning trap? I will admit I do, Roger. I feel like I'm making choices. I'm planning out people and resources. So why is it so hard why is it easy to fall in the planning trap?
There's sort of a variety of reasons. I'm going to try and give them quickly. One is it just isn't taught. And you'd say, are you kidding me, Roger? There are strategy courses in every business program. They teach planning. So it's a lost art in the sense that it just isn't taught. That's one reason. A second reason is it's just harder, right? It's harder to say to have a complete mindset. Right. And as you know, I've worked a whole lot with IDEO. I'm doing this course with IDEO because I love you guys. And IDEO is so customer driven, user driven. You start so much with that. That would not be the way I'd describe most of business, right? Most of business doesn't start there and work backward from that point. Instead, they start where they are, which is I run a factory. I run this sales region. Here's what we control. And so it's more familiar and it's easier. And so unless you have kind of somebody, in the leadership of the company who is saying, we serve the customer. Like, A.G. Lafley, my co-author of Playing to Win, when he took over as CEO of P&G. P&G, what you think of as a highly customer-oriented company, had to say, one of his adages, which he said over and over again, consumer is boss, consumer is boss. And he wanted to make sure that we weren't saying our engineers, our clever engineers are boss, our marketers are boss. No, the consumer is boss. And what he essentially meant by that is what I mean by it. You don't control them. You have to compel them. And the only way you can compel them is really, really understanding them and having that recognition. But it's not taught nearly as much as it should be.
So let's go there. So to summarize where we are so far, strategy and planning are two different things, not to be confused. And the most important thing about strategy is it seeks to influence or compel the things that are not in your control, in particular customers. So let's talk about what makes a good strategy and how teams can go about making good strategy. What are the qualities? Let's start there.
So one is it is choiceful, and it makes what I call real choices. And I have a simple definition that I hope people find helpful, which is, you've made a real strategy choice if the opposite of your choice is not stupid on its face. Right?
I need you to say more. I'm sorry.
Yes. So let's just think of a choice, and you'll see this in many strategic plans. Okay. Our strategy is to be consumer centric.
Okay.
So let's just think, what's the opposite? Our strategy is to ignore consumers entirely. Well, that's stupid, right? That's just plain stupid. So all you've made is a choice to be non-stupid, right? And that'll get you a D or a C minus, right? It's not going to get you an A. If instead you're Four Seasons hotel chain, and you say, in our industry, which is the luxury hotel space, that segment of the industry, luxury service is defined as grand architecture and decor and sort of obsequious service. Yes, ma'am. What would you like, ma'am? We'll do anything for you, ma'am. Right.
Mm.
And Four Seasons made a strategy choice to say, no, we're going to define luxury service as service that makes up for what you left at home or at the office. Because even though you're staying in a luxury hotel, there's a place you'd rather be, at home. And if you can't be at home, you'd still rather be at the office in front of being at a hotel, because at least you can be productive there.
I love it. Got it.
And so they're both have an aspect of a true aspect of customer centricity, but Four Seasons made a choice to do something that everybody else made a different choice, right? Grand architecture and decor.
Yep.
Service that makes up for what you left at home in the office. That was a real choice. And it turned out to be a really good choice, because it turns out that all these people staying in luxury hotels preferred that
Is it? Yeah.
And then they could configure all their activities around that. So I ask you the question, who do you think was the first company to hotel chain to put shampoo in the showers, little bottles of shampoo in the showers? Who did it?
Four Seasons.
Yeah. But why? Yeah. Why do you think that occurred to them?
I get it. Because it tied back to their strategic choice of, we want to provide services for what you can't have at home. So it went back to they had a theory for what was going to be of value to their customers.
See, you're a strategist.
Well, I've learned a lot from you. And what's a nuance in your story that I think is really important to emphasize is it's about making choices of what you will do and also what you won't do.
Okay.
Like we have someone saying, it's strategy about doing the right things. And like it's about making choices, which includes placing bets on something that might not work out because you don't know.
That is absolutely right, and in some sense it's of all the things you could do, it's figuring out the things that if you did would provide the greatest leverage for you in accomplishing your goals. And Izzy Sharp, founder of Four Seasons, goal was to become the #1 luxury hotel company and to be the definition of luxury service. In order to do that, he couldn't do all the things that were possible to do.
Right. You had to make some choice of what you exactly. So
and often sort of like a relatively tiny sub segment. And just on your not to do point, like so one of the things he did under this strategy is sell off all of his hotel properties and get out of the hotel development business.
Oh, interesting.
He became a hotel management company. Rich people like Bill Gates, who now owns the whole company, and David Thompson and Michael Dell and all, they own the property that Four Seasons are on, and they actually own and fund the structure. Yeah. Four Seasons specifies kind of everything for them, and Four Seasons manages it. Why did he say that? He said, being a real estate developer, that's such a different business from running a hotel. And so what we're going to have to do is get rid of that. So we're going to stop doing something that everybody else does. Now, lots of them have now followed for but at the time, so the choice wasn't stupid because everybody else was doing it, so that we can focus all of our energy on fabulous service. Yeah,
such a key idea. And of course, Roger, you have experience in these very big, significant industries. I just do want to say too, all of us can use these same approaches in whatever team or organization we are in, including things like education and government. We're very much talking about consumer behaviors, but the principles apply to making choices of how to compel and to provide value to whoever the audience is whom you serve, whether that is students or hotel guests.
Absolutely.
So let's talk a little bit about tips you have for wherever people sit within their org to really focus on their customer and whoever that is. I will just say, you teach this strategic process in your course, and it's everything from, it's a structured process for how to understand where to play and how to win. So we're not going to go into that in depth, but I am hoping you'll share like one of your top tips for where to focus if somebody is looking to make choices for their strategy.
Well, I guess the first thing I would say is remember that you have lots of choices as to where, right?
Okay.
Since we've talked about it, and it's easier to talk, within the hotel business, the luxury hotel business, right? There was kind of land acquisition, right? Figuring out great possible land, kind of construction, building, all that stuff, then running and managing the hotel. It is easy to say, no. Hotel business means doing all those things, right? Because everybody else defines it that way. No, that's an implicit where choice of everything. And making that choice kind of, rather than just implicit, it's sort of like, we're a hotel company, so we do all those things. You say, no, there's a where choice, and we're just going to do this one. I'd recommend that for everybody. Just look at what you're doing now through this context of where. What's the set of wheres we're engaged in now? And then ask yourself the question, is that optimal? Is there a way to, sometimes it's expanded. Oh, we're in a narrow one, and if we actually did these other things too, that would be differentiated. Or we're just going to do one or two of the things that everybody else does. So that would be my first tip: is just don't take as given what the where your company has implicitly decided on, or the industry is all decided on. Think about a different one, and how you think about that different one is on the basis of winning, which is, how can you do that in a way to create superior value for the customers you want to serve, right? And again, for Four Seasons, what Izzy said is, if we got rid of these things, we could focus our energy and attention on this one domain of how it feels to be in our hotels, and a bunch of customers will really care about that, and they will say, yes, we will pay what we need to pay to Four Seasons for that. So you take the where and then reflect on, in what where could we provide great value to the customer.
So I want to expand one little point you're making there too, around providing value to customers. So I know many organizations often rely on quantitative data about their customers, which is important. When it comes to strategy, I've heard you say qualitative data as part of your customer understanding is very important. Why is that? Tell me more.
And I won't fight you, and I'll be generous. Quantitative, it has some utility. I sometimes wonder whether that's too generous, but because I think the greatest strategies come from a depth of understanding of customers that is hard to acquire when you essentially flatten out the exploration with the customer. So let's just say I'm going to do a customer survey of 10,000 customers, including a co-lead at Stafford, and I have as question 3 kind of, how much do you like, blue colored, whatever it is, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 on a scale of 5. Well, essentially, that's taking everything you think about color and flattening it into it's either a 1, a 2, a 3, a 4, a 5. All nuances are gone completely from them. If you actually think about color in a different way than we've asked the question, and probably color is a dumb example, but I said taste or something. You actually think of taste in a different way. Then when you say 3, and I accumulate that with all the other answers to come up with what people think about taste, it's this cold, flat, meaningless thing. And so I want all the nuances. And this is why I say, if given the choice, if I'm a CEO or I'm advising a CEO, and I say to the CEO, you have a choice of either having a quantitative survey of 10,000 people, or you Mr. or Miss CEO going out and personally spending an hour with 10 customers.
Yeah.
I'll take the latter over the former 100% of the time. 100% of the time. Why? It's because that CEO, if he or she is worth their salt, is really intelligent, really understands the industry in which they're asking the questions, and will be able to process all of that information. They'll ask you questions. They'll look at oh, did Co smile when I said that, or did she frown when I said that? All these little signals that you can't quantify.
Yeah.
And come away from that with some much more deep insights.
Yeah.
Now people say, but what if it's not representative? Oh, that's terrible. I say, you want the insights, and then you can go back now that you have the insights and do the quantitative survey. So they're complements more than substitutes. But sorry, I interrupted.
No. What I hear you saying is it adds that distinction that enables you to better understand why this choice is of value to a customer, or it adds a nuance that I think helps give definition to, goes back to that strategic choice. It helps you understand why that choice is where you want to play or where you want to place the bet.
I agree entirely. I mean, like mastery of a domain, of a subject matter, is illustrated by or manifested in your ability to make finer and finer distinctions.
Oh, I see.
So and you're a designer, you hang around with all those designers, like when Tim Brown sort of says, not quite, if we just made it a little bit this way or that way, right? You'll listen to it because he can make this fine. That was not quite. I mean, you're not graphic designers, but oh, that's not quite the right color. Not exactly. It's close. It's so close. It's so close. But if we just amp this up a little bit, and if you took a non-subject matter expert, a non-designer, and they looked at the same thing, they'd say, that's okay.
Or an MD, an experienced MD looking at a set of X-rays versus an intern. Like there's so much fine.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. And they can say, ooh, that's not healing exactly the way it should be healing. We've got to recast that arm to put a little more pressure on it. Whereas, the intern would be like, looks pretty good.
Fascinating.
Looks pretty good to me. So I want, when we're talking to customers, right? Like I want somebody with the highest level of connoisseurship to be understanding those customers and coming to the most important kind of points of view. Yeah, right. And it's like, Steve Jobs, like I want the corners around it. Okay, you got that. Nice brown. How can you prove that in advance that you can't? You need a connoisseur.
It goes back to the things you can't influence, but you can make more informed decisions the more connected you are to the people whom you serve, is what I'm hearing you say.
Yeah, and it'll compel them. It'll compel them. They'll
compel
say,
them.
I have to have this one. And I was looking at the statistics recently. So Apple sells about, depending on the month, 15, 16, 17% of the world's smartphones, right? What percentage of the operating profit dollars in the whole industry do you think Apple makes? So 15% share, what share of profit?
Well, often that you'd think it'd be similar, within a similar range, maybe 15 to 20 or 30%.
How about 75?
Yeah. They're making good choices, clearly.
They're making choices. The other 85% of producers have to make do with 25% of them. But actually, Samsung, who also has a strategy, it's a different strategy, sells 17, 18% in an average quarter, and they make 20% of the profit. So the remaining 2/3 make 5%. And that's because the rest of them are not making distinctive choices that compels customers to pay them enough to make a buck. It's a charity. 67% of all smartphone sales in the world are a charity. because those operating profit dollars, 5% doesn't cover all the rest of the costs. So they're a charitable activity. Why? Because they aren't compelling. Yes, people buy them because it's 67% of them, but what do they sell them at? A rate that isn't justified economically.
So, Roger, we're getting close to the time where we're going to ask questions, but I do
No,
want to. I know.
we're all done. This flies. This time flies.
I know we've got some good questions, but I do want to just.
Good.
I want to honor. So we have taken a lot of time to go deep on a couple key constructs, and we did this on purpose because strategy and planning, like we said at the beginning, oftentimes when teams think they are doing strategy, they're just doing planning. And so the nuance that we just wanted to make sure everyone felt today was it's about making choices to influence the things you can't control. One of the biggest ones being customers. And so the more time you spend with your customers, understanding their needs, what's of value, the more informed strategic choices you can make. But even so, all of them are bets. They're not guarantees. I think that's what's important. Any last points on just that kind of
you summarized it so nicely, Co, for what it's worth. That is the essence. If that would be the thing that listeners take away from that's the most important thing.
All right. So then I guess we can go to some questions. I think that would be good. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
So let's start with timing. I know you've heard this one before. Timing for strategy. When should organizations or groups talk about strategy, and how often?
So the way I think about strategy is a problem-solving technique. So anytime you have a situation where what you wish were happening is much greater and more favorable than what is happening, so there's a gap between the outcomes you're achieving and your wishes, that's the time to do strategy. And it doesn't matter what time of year it is. There is no annual cycle to that. It's a problem-solving technique for tackling problems whenever they are. Planning is a regular thing. Like you have to, especially if you're a public company, you have to go to the board with a budget for an operating plan and budget for the next year. And so there's some timing to that where you've got to put it together. But that's divorced completely in my mind from strategy. You should do strategy. Do an exercise of making choices whenever there's a gap between what is happening and what you wish were happening, because what is happening is a function of all the choices you've made to date, right? That's what produces the outcomes. And so it's the definition of insanity if you think somehow those outcomes are going to get a whole lot better without making any different choices. So it's the way the world informing you need to make a different set of choices. That's the time for strategy.
And let's just be honest, in this post-pandemic world, everything is changing often. And I feel like it's a much more dynamic sensibility you have to have at all times, I feel like, as a leader in your org, to be tuning in to what isn't working. Yeah.
And like, to go back again to an IDEO thing, right? In many respects, you brought at a commercial level to the world the notion of rapid iterative prototyping. And in many senses, I think the COVID world and the post-COVID world is manifesting the fact that you have to view what you do as rapid iterative prototyping.
I love that.
You make choices. It's important to make choices, right? But you're going to learn something from every choice interacting with the world, and then you're going to have to tweak it and make it better and make it better and make it better. And so I think like my advice to the world would be to take that concept from design and apply it to strategy. Now, in the world of strategy, right? Like one of the things that you preach at IDEO, I know, is make it cheap and low res. Like, don't spend an insane amount of money on that first thing. In strategy, sometimes you're going to have to spend a big amount of money to put in action something to be able to get the reaction that'll enable you to improve it. So it can be higher stakes, but I would argue it's the same kind of game. Like even as IDEO is doing rapid prototyping, time is passing, time is money, right? And so there is a cost to it, whether the cost is medium, big, or little. But take that approach. Don't be too precious, and also just don't assume that you can get everything right out of the box. If anybody hasn't read it, there's a great book by Bill Buxton called Sketching User Experiences. He's great user-based designer, and he has a chapter called The Instant Success of the iPod. And in it, and it's a sarcastic title of the chapter, because he shows, there's a fold out thing where he shows how much the iPod iterated in its first about 3 years. And so the last pictures, maybe the 8th on this iteration, is what we think an iPod looks like, because they kind of then stabilized on that. But he shows, no, it wasn't an instant perfect device.
It never is.
Iterated, they iterated and iterated and iterated, and it became the perfect device that sold like hotcakes, because they weren't satisfied and resting on their laurels of something pretty good. They just made it better and better and better.
Got it. Okay, Roger, we have so many good questions, so I'm going to keep trying to get through as many as we can.
Okay, and I'll try and give a quick answer.
These are we're doing great. Organizational change. So this is we have a lot of questions around, how do you encourage an organization to shift away from planning to strategy, which can be a lot more uncomfortable, as we talked about.
Yeah. Yep. You're right. It is hard. What I've sort of come to understand over time, that one of the best tools for doing that is to help them understand that everybody has a strategy, whether it came out of any conscious set of decision making or not. Your strategy is what you do. So I always start with, let's reverse engineer your strategy, and that's what you do. And then you got them and say that, and then say, okay, the outcomes that this is producing, how do you feel about them? And if they say we feel great about them, I say, well, just keep doing them, I guess. But in 99 times out of 100, they say, well, I wish this were different. I wish this were different. And then I can say, okay, we have to make a different set of choices, right? And that tends to ease them into it. I don't sort of say you have to do this thing called strategy. In fact, I often don't even call it that. I just say we got to make some different set of choices. Let's start thinking through that. So you can never get somebody to do something new and different if they're completely satisfied with what's going on today, right? So you've got to find the place in which they are not satisfied, and then show them an exercise for getting what satisfies them. And then they will say, well, I want to do more of that thing. And you can say, well, that's strategy, guys and gals. And then they're more ready. I would say to everybody on this call, like, do not go in and try to say to people, you have to do strategy. You silly people, you have to do strategy. You're not doing strategy. That won't work. Solve a problem for them. Be relentlessly useful. And good things will happen. As you know, I say, I have the doctrine of relentless utility. If you focus on utility, good things will happen.
And just back to wisdom from you too, focus on your customer. I'm never, even though I've practiced this for years, I'm continually humbled by whenever I'm with a team that feels stuck, if we just take time to focus on our customer, listen to them, connect with them, we always find a path forward and something meaningful to focus on. So,
absolutely. But you have to sort of get rid of a preconceived notion of we're going to have to do this and then this and then this. Listen, and you said again the magic words, Co. You will find a path forward.
You will.
You have one that you're imposing on them. You will find one together with them.
So. Yeah. So let's do one more question. There's
Yeah.
quite a few people asking about how this applies to these same constructs apply to the public sector or social impact.
Yep.
Do you have an example of a story of how, how these can apply to improving the world for human beings or nonprofits, some of
Sure.
those spaces?
Sure. So the framework that I use for strategy is winning aspiration, where to play, how to win, capabilities, management systems. The big change that I make in when I'm working for any kind of nonprofit is to change slightly the definition of win. What's a win mean? And for me, a win means providing value that's far in excess of the costs that are put in. So typically in nonprofits, the fundamental structure of them is somebody else pays the bills than those receiving the benefits, right? So if you're kind of working, say St. Jude's Hospital, right? All sorts of donors provide money so St. Jude's can give resources to somebody else. They will give more money, and you'll be able to help more people to the extent that you create all sorts of value. So what you have to say is, where can we play where we can create all sorts of value to the target, the target of this philanthropy, and then you'll have a world in which the philanthropists will say, "Boy, that was," or government will say, "That's a great place to spend our resources, and we'll give them that, and then you can do more."
Yeah. Can you give one really tangible example within either like education or government of what it means to provide value? Just so we're tracking.
Sure. So I was dean of Rodman School for 15 years. The value that we want to create is to have students learn something very valuable that makes them employable in jobs of the sort that they're interested in and in helping the world. You're competing against a bajillion other business schools. You have to figure out how you can do that in a distinctive way so that the government, donors, students, it's a tripartite kind of funding of those things, will say, we'll give you the resources because you're producing kind of great output that will be helpful to the world.
And I love, like you said, the nuance there too, learning things that they can apply, be useful in a skill, in a job. Yep.
Yeah.
Got it. All right. I have one last question kind of in the open question area, and then we're going to have to wrap. So sorry.
Boo-hoo.
So let's
do it again.
I know, right? Let's tie it back to where we started our conversation. So Roger, how would you redesign the relationship between planning and strategy?
To just ensure that they're viewed as complements, not substitutes. In the world today, planning is a substitute for strategy at least 90% of the time, maybe closer to 95% of the time.
That was perfect. Okay. So Roger, we're going to start wrapping up. I have one last fun question for you, and I'll let you think on that, and then I'm going to wrap us up. I always love to ask guests, what advice would you have given to a younger Roger at an earlier stage in your career? So while you think on that, I want to thank everyone for listening. This has just been a wonderful conversation with Roger Martin, and thank you everyone for your questions and fodder. If you like what you've heard, I invite you to check out our IDOU course, Designing Strategy, which Roger mentioned. He is the instructor, along with the colleague he mentioned, Jennifer Riel.
The beloved Jennifer Riel.
Agreed. You can find out more at idou.com/designing strategy. And if you want to boost more of your skills in this area, I actually recommend our strategy certificate program, which combines Roger's course with a second course called Activating Strategy. And it's all about bringing your strategy to life and others along, and in how you make everyday choices. We'll share the links on the screen, and you can find out more at idou.com/strategy cert. I've said strategy a lot today, Roger. Okay, so back to you. Advice for a younger Roger or a different stage of your career.
Be more patient with others. So earlier in my career, I've always had this helpful desire. I want to help people get better, do better, etc. And I would get frustrated that that wasn't happening as fast as I thought it should happen. And now I just realized that all change takes time, and they're not changing because they reject your thoughts or whatever. They're often processing it and trying to figure out how to fit it into their lives. And I think I'm a better advisor. I'm a better helper now because I'm more patient with the folks with whom I work, not because I have a lower aspiration for them. I think they're going to get to a great place, but I'm now more chilled out about along what path, at what pace they're going to do it.
That's wonderful. Thank you, Roger. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Roger. Thank you, everyone, for listening. Hope you go enjoy your day and think about how you want to approach strategy versus just control what you can with planning. Okay. Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Bye-bye.